After 45 days, gestating sows are moved to group housing pens. One pen of sows equals about 2 weeks' worth of farrowings.
We do try and group the sows a bit to have the biggest sows and the smallest sows together, and that has worked out well for us.
Reed says the odd sow will show up open when they're first moved into group housing.
And if a sow comes in to heat in here and I detect it, I will pull her out and take her back to the breeding barn. Sometimes we will rebreed her, bring her back and put her in the pen. Other times we will not bring her back in and put her with the group. It's not a big issue to pull her out for 2 days and then put her back in with the group. That's not an issue at all.
Reed tried a number of ways to reduce aggression when sows are first moved into group housing.
When we started this out, we've tried putting a few bales of straw in here at different times, and that just seemed to be a bit of a pain. One other thing we did was put boars in the pens. I put a boar in the pen after we put the sows in, and that wasn't a real big advantage. But the last thing we've done, and I think works the best, is throw a bag of shavings in when we fill these pens up, put the sows in. And what it does, it gives the sows something to chew on, and it gives them a little better footing when there's a little bit of aggression in that first 24-hour period. And the shavings disappear into the pit, and it's worked out well, put it that way. You'll get the odd sow, maybe to be 1 out of every 100 that will be a troublemaker, and we'll pull her out and put her in a stall or put her somewhere else. They just don't fit into the loose housing.
Reed says once the sows are settled in, they spend much of their time lying around.
Feeding would be the only time of day that they'll get up and get moving. Other than when the sprinkler comes on in the summer months of the year at the back of the pen, they will go back there to lay under the sprinkler to cool off, which is a real asset too and works very well.
Reed says the way that sows are fed helps to keep aggression in check.
We feed here 8 times a day, which I think is a big bonus. It's done automatically, it's not observed, and we run into very few problems here with it being done automatic. I think that is one of the biggest benefits here, keeping the sows happy, is there's never any aggression towards feed because they're being fed 8 times a day, and it's not a big option. It's just routine for them. When they're being fed 8 times a day, it's just in direct proportion to how much they would get if they were being fed once a day. It's just cut back. They're just fed very little at each feeding, and it's spread out. That's how we monitor it. The smaller sows, we might give them as much as 3 kilograms a day. The bigger sows, we might cut them down to 2 kilograms a day, and even a little lower. Going to 8 times a day feeding, it was no issue at all with the sows. It went extremely. I think it'd be a bigger task going the other way, to cut them back to 1 or 2 feedings a day, but no. To go to 8 feedings a day, it just gives them something to do. It's entertainment for them.
He says the controller for the automatic feeder costs between $1,500 and $2,000.
It's PCs, what they call it, so it's a little time clock. It basically lasts forever, and one controller that opens and closes the drops. Our electrician set it up for us, and yeah, they're not, you can't go out and buy them on the market anywhere, but if you talk to a good licensed electrician, I think he can set it up for you.
Reed finds that maintaining group housing pens and sows is easier than crates.
And at this point in time, I think we've maybe scraped out 2 pens in the whole history of this barn being in operation. And it's usually just because we emptied it out. Messing up the pen has not been a big problem. We will come in and wash out the pens and wash down the ceiling occasionally and clean everything up, but that's only done a couple times a year. And the pens might be washed out 3 times a year, or as time allows us to it, but it's not done on a routine basis. Our stall barn's about 12 years old, and it has a lot more maintenance than this barn will ever have.
Reed says the biggest difference between group housing and stalls is the sows are more content and happier.
Whenever you walk into a dry sow barn in stalls, the sows will get up and start squealing almost immediately. In the loose housing, you come in here any time of the day and the sows always seem happy and content. And therefore, that's the biggest reason why I think it takes less feed to keep these sows in condition, because they're always content. I think stalls still have a place for a few sows for a short time, but I could go along with loose housing for the whole herd. I think a barn could be set up for loose housing and there wouldn't be an issue at all.
The Wilsons wean piglets at 16 days of age. Reed says he doesn't see a big difference in litter size with group housing.
But I do think there's a difference on the ease of farrowing because these sows get more exercise opposed to a sow in a stall. But we've never been able to we've never followed it close enough to document it, but there's certainly no downfall.
Reed credits the success of group housing on his farm to a positive attitude and good management.
So I am the owner here and work in the barn on a full-time basis, so I observe everything, and the help I have is excellent, and it makes a big difference here. We monitor things on a daily basis, and if there's a problem, we look after it. It doesn't let go. And we've always had the attitude that it would work, and we've made it work, and it has worked well.
As you can see, group housing for gestating sows is working well for these producers. Every farm is unique, but there are some basic principles. The key to success is understanding sow behavior. The most aggressive encounters between sows usually occur when they're first mixed into a group. Sows only form a dominance hierarchy when they perceive that their resources, primarily food, are limited. If a housing system is designed in such a way that competition for food, water, and preferred resting places is unnecessary or unproductive, sows won't waste energy on aggressive behaviors. It's natural behavior for sows to eat off the ground. Group housing pens that are well designed with floor feeding best suit that natural behavior. Competition for feed and resulting aggression can be reduced by spreading out the feed over the entire solid floor surface of the pen. Cones or Y diverters can be used to drop small amounts 3 to 8 times throughout the day. This prevents sows from becoming overly hungry and anxious at feeding time, thus reducing the incentive for aggression. Adding structure to the pen to spread out the sows will also decrease aggression. This can be done with partition walls, a center dunging alley, or larger group size. Group gestation barns are less expensive to build than traditional stall barns. The cost will vary according to design, square footage per sow, complexity of the pen, feeding method, and amount of slatted area. They're generally less expensive to build because there's no cost for stalls, feed troughs, or complex gutter and floor designs. A recent analysis of Ontario building costs shows that a group gestation barn could be built for the same price as a barn with stalls when you include pens, automatic multiple times a day drop feeding, and allow 25 square feet per sow. The housing designs and management systems that you've seen were created on Ontario farms by Ontario producers. They created these systems through trial and error until there was limited or no aggression between sows. The success of these systems has been evaluated in a number of ways. Sows have fewer scratches, injuries, and lameness, and their body condition remains even. Farrowing rates are greater than 80%. Producers rarely have to remove sows that are not doing well in a group environment. And finally, producers find that working in barns with group sow housing is a quiet and pleasant alternative to gestation stalls.